Canon EOS R. Good camera.
Boom, just like that, back in the office. What's going on, guys? Thanks for stopping by. Today's video, we're gonna be talking about the Canon EOS R after having owned it for about 8 months, using it as my primary camera for work and using it for all else things creative in my own personal life. Initially, I wanted to do this review at 6 months, but well, here we are at 8 months and it still hasn't been done. So you're getting 2 extra months of experience from my personal use out of this video. So in one of my last videos, I went over what this camera does or is supposed to do extremely well. Rather than going back over all of that information, I'm literally just gonna stick to the things that stuck out to me the most while using this camera over the past 8 months. I'm gonna talk about some of the good things that stuck out to me. I'm also gonna talk about some of the bad things that stuck out to me while using this camera. And I'm not just gonna keep it biased towards this camera being great, because it definitely has its flaws like any camera will. To kick off this video, rather than starting with the good, I'm actually going to start with the bad, because I'm assuming that's why most of you are probably here. So the first thing I want to bring up, I don't like that they put the control rings on the RF lenses rather than just building that feature as a standard feature on all new mirrorless camera bodies that Canon comes out with. The control ring itself is a great feature and I love using it, but unless you have an RF lens, which I don't, you can't use that feature. Now, I have experience using the control rings because my camera at work, which is also an EOS R, has an RF lens. I don't know, that kind of seems odd to me why they would build it into the lens and not just into the camera so that you can have that feature no matter what lens you're using. But I have found that there is a way around this if you're using this with EF lenses or the old Canon lenses. The little adapter that you get for the Canon EOS R to use the old EF lenses on that model, for an extra $100, you can get one that has a control ring built onto it. So now, no matter what lens you're using, you're gonna have the control ring as a standard feature on your camera. Canon, just put the control ring on the camera body. The adapter does it, so I know it can be done. All right, so the next thing that I noticed that I didn't like about this camera, this is gonna come as no surprise because literally everyone says this, but the little arrow slider bar at the top that they made customizable, I touched on it a little bit in my last video. I thought, maybe I could get some use out of it. I literally never use this feature on the camera. And you can see why Canon removed that from every mirrorless camera they built moving forward from the EOS R, because it's pointless. All right, so now we're on to the good stuff that I noticed while using this camera the last 8 months. And yes, the image quality is incredible. It's got a 30 megapixel sensor, so you're gonna get good image quality. The build of this camera is really nice. It's ergonomic. All of the good stuff they talk about for this camera, yes, that stuff exists. I'm gonna talk about the things that actually stood out to me that I benefited from to hopefully give you a better idea of what this camera can do for you. So the first thing that I really liked, that I'm only gonna touch on briefly because it's well known at this point, the customization of this camera. There's so many buttons. If you get a lens with a control ring or the adapter with the control ring, you can customize that. You can really make this camera be whatever it needs to be for your shooting style. I'm gonna leave it at that, but just know that this stood out to me at how customizable this camera was for you to make your own. The next thing that stood out to me that was actually a really good thing about this camera was the battery life. Battery life was phenomenal. I went a day and a half to 2 days on one battery, and granted, that depends on how much you use it, but I use my camera pretty heavily when I am using it. I do a lot of video. It's on most of the time when I'm using it, and I take a lot of photos. So to get a day and a half, upwards near 2 days of battery life from one battery was beyond my expectations. Like you watching this video, I did a ton of research on the Canon EOS R, the Canon EOS RP, the Canon EOS R6 to try to figure out which one I really wanted. And a common theme I noticed among all of the reviews was talking about how the battery life wasn't as long as what the old DSLRs used to be. Now, I was blown out of the water. It went as long, if not longer, than my Canon 80D. So I have nothing but good things to say about the battery life. And lastly, but definitely not least, the final thing that I noticed about this camera that I thought was impressive was the durability of the camera. Now, I take pretty good care of my gear. I'm not throwing it around. It's usually always being protected, lens cap, in the bag. I clean it often, so it's not like I'm rough with my gear. But even after 8 months of typical use, heavy use, you could maybe even say, it really shows no signs of wear. I've never dropped it. I've never really done anything to cause any sort of scuffs. So there's no scuffs on it, but it doesn't even have minor signs of use or wear and tear. And when you hold it, you can tell it's got a very durable feel. I don't really know how to explain that through a video. I'm not gonna go throw it around and rough it up to prove that, but just take my word for it. 8 months of use, it still looks brand new. That says something. So those are the features and the things that stood out to me the last 8 months using this camera. If there's something that I didn't touch on in this video that you're really curious about with the Canon EOS R, let me know down in the comments. I'd be happy to answer with my experience or with any knowledge I have on the camera, since I have had it and been using it for a while. And if you haven't already, it goes without saying, but subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I've got a lot of stuff planned for the rest of this year and into next year, so you're not gonna wanna miss that. Whew, that's all I got for this one. Take it easy, guys. How long before you think I burp? This is what you don't see. All of the sitting in silence, trying to think of what I'm gonna say, taking drinks, or stopping because I have the burp. Subscribe for the burps.